Welcome, my name's Chris and I'm back this week with another lesson for you. This is on one of my favorite tunes that I thought you could learn a lot from a music theory perspective, or if you just want to learn the song. The song's called Julep. It is by a group called Punch Brothers, kind of a acoustic, what appear to be bluegrass group, but really is a fusion kind of group with many different kinds of music, including classical influence, pop music influence. Still there's that bluegrass kind of strain in their music. I just love them. I've learned a lot of their music over the years and it's kept me really growing as a musician, I think. And I'm just a huge fan. So I want to break this song down today. Again, this is not going to be really a tutorial per se, though I will cover how to play it on guitar, but you could apply this to any instrument. And I'm talking about some of the higher level concepts that I think is so cool in this tune. So I've got three overlying principles here we're going to go over. I'm hoping I can do this in one video, and I'm just going to jump in with the basics here. So give this song a listen if you're not aware of it. I'm very aware of this song, and I've never actually been interested in the right way to play it. I've just kind of heard it so much and watched them play it so much that I've kind of learned it by osmosis. So this is how I would go about learning any more complicated music, especially if it was for like a gig or something. I'd probably make it some kind of chart. So I made an overview chart of the form here just for us to have a sense of the measures and the parts. Okay, so also on here I have the harmony. So when I hear this tune, I kind of hear this first whole section in the key V minor. We have this like little motif, right? That's pretty much it. So we have a G, a B, and an E. And it really like dumps off as this being like the one, right? Especially with the melody. It's actually good practice to play both, right, to kind of figure out if you can. A really good way to study tunes, especially when the melody is possible to play. But of course the guitar doesn't play anything in this section. Though if you were gonna cover this song, you probably want to learn that bass line. And maybe some of the groove, like to kind of get. Of course, we can't do it just like the Punch Brothers unless you have 5 people. But it's really cool to try to really emulate music like this. I think that really makes us a lot better, and it turns on these intuitional automatic things like being percussive like the song, playing the bass line of the song, playing the dynamics of the song, all that. So, okay, so that's the interlude, is this first part, INT. The verse is I die happy in my sleep. Of course, we have 6 measures, kind of interesting. Not full 8 measures, right? So this is especially when charts can be helpful. Chorus 1, Heaven's a Julep on the Porch, I believe is the lyric. And that is the first kind of announcement of that. And I'm calling that the chorus. We have 8 measures. Interlude is actually when the guitar comes in. So that's this little section. And I'll talk about that significance of those notes in a little bit, but that's that section. We also have this little banjo motif. Actually, it's in this context. So the banjo's kind of playing that little thing that comes back later. That comes in right there, which is really cool. And then this verse, we have those beautiful banjo harmonics. That stuff, it's not exact, but it sounds like that. Chorus 2 is kind of a little bit more full than chorus 1. And it's a similar repeat of a lot of the lyrical content. And then the interlude, again, is going to be just like the first one, only it's double. This kind of transitions just to that next bridge section. That's where the a guitar, again, is playing. Okay, so the bridge section is this, I call it bridge interlude, 8 measures and 7. Again, we have 1 measure short. So this is just kind of a cool way to get a little bit bespoke, if you will, with your song form. Occasionally take off a measure if you're a songwriter. It can be really cool. There's something about there's kind of this autonomy your music finds, I think, especially if you're really open to this kind of thing and open to breaking rules, and actually I think lends to a better song because it's more memorable, right? It's kind of like interesting designed house or something that just brings you in because of its uniqueness. So I kind of like that as a writer, which I don't write a ton of tunes, but I've used this as a composer, this idea. These short measures, or short phrases. Okay, so this part, we have this new key center of D. So I hear really the D, this kind of a pedal which means that it's just like a common bass note, and the chords are kind of changing above it. And there's that banjo part again, so we're going to go over that part in a second more, but I kind of hear that as in the key of D. That goes on again for 15 measures, and then when we have the actual bridge kind of section proper with the vocals, it kind of now sounds like we're in the key of A, right? Which is super cool, because there's all this kind of congruence with these keys, like E minor and D share quite a lot of stuff. And then D is also the 4 chord in the key of A. And I'm going to talk more about that more in depth in a second with the harmony. But we have this section, 4 measure intro. So we have this, and then the vocals come in, the beautiful harmony they do. I guess it's like 3-part. It's good practice to figure out where you can play all those parts. Right, that's good stuff. And then we get back after this section. And now we're back to this stuff. So this bridge interlude again kind of shifts to D. That's kind of how I hear it. 11 measures, again abnormal. And then we build, I think this ends us up on an F sharp minor at the end. And that kind of goes right into the G. And this chorus 3 is, they're all different. That's why I labeled them differently like that. So chorus 3 has different lyrics. She's just a girl that I would meet, I believe. That might be getting the lyric wrong, but. And then this again sounds like E minor. Kind of cool, right? And then I love that we have the first chorus, like from the beginning, I died happy. 6 measures, and then chorus 2, Heaven's Your Julep, with 8 measures, and that's kind of that whole section kind of blends in together till the end, right? And then we have this out section, which is just the interlude, and that repeats quite a lot. We have 16 bars plus 4. Okay, so that's the overview of the form, and I have done that for many tunes like this, anything this level of difficulty or harder, especially with like these weird short measures and there's different parts. This is music that's heavily considered, and it's not just like verse, chorus, right? So going on to this other stuff here. I'll actually get into the parts. Here's number 3 actually. It says it's interlude and bridge melody. So this will help explain kind of my thought process on number 2 on the harmony. This whole part, right? I kind of hear that. You can kind of just sum that down to E minor, right? You could say it's G, B minor, E minor, but there's not a ton of chord kind of harmonic marking of that. It's just kind of that bass line. Something that will study, especially on piano. It's really easy to see this, but in E minor chord, the upper extensions of it. So like we have root, 3rd, 5, 7, 11, or sorry, that's 9, 11. And if you go up high enough, an E minor chord kind of sounds really good with a D triad. And that's what the Chris Eldridge plays in this part, in the interlude. So this little thing is F sharp B, 7/7 on thinnest, and 7/5. And then this right here is F sharp A, the top part of a D triad. The next is 7/7. So I'm kind of playing the 2 thinnest of this D triad here. This is a good triad shape here. It kind of comes from an A chord. Right, 7/7/5. And so it starts with this B is not in, that's not in the D chord. But the rest of this is a D chord, and it continues down 7/7/7 on the D, G, and B. And then finally, I think it goes all the way down to here, 7/7/9. That's just all a D chord, right? So we have D chord, D chord, D chord. And when you put all that together with this first extra note, I get this. I think that's pretty close. But the cool thing about this is that D stuff, right, that's all D major, harmonized against this E, so that means that it has this sound. Right, isn't that super cool? And remember, because this whole section, I kind of am boiling down to E minor. So that's a really cool thing that it kind of explains the note choices. And in general, this whole tune is really relying on these ideas. Okay, so now that's the interlude melody. That's on the bottom. Can't see it. There it is. Now the bridge melody. Let's talk about that, and then we're going to get to number 2. We'll just jumped around here. But the chord extensions on number 2 is obviously, we just talked about that, right? So it's actually kind of a cool thing to see. We'll talk more about this in the future, in future videos, but the natural extensions that come from chords, just to be really familiar with those. And it actually kind of alternates. E minor is a minor third, right? And then a major third. And then the next extension out of chords, it just alternates minor and major thirds. So minor third, major third, minor third, major third, minor third, major third. And that actually leads us to this note, the C sharp, that's included a lot in this tune, in the E minor context. Right, and then we call that Dorian. So that's my second point. So let me talk about the Dorian and we'll come back to number 3. So Dorian mode has that, it's a minor scale with instead of this really, really kind of angular dissonant note, right? It's this note. Right, and what's the tune? Scarborough Fair. That's how I learned about Dorian when I was a kid. Right, that sound. Extremely common, and it's a little bit more soft sounding than that really angular, right? That's the natural minor, very dissonant, wants to go down really hard. So the Dorian mode kind of lightens that, and you'll hear the that banjo motif in like the second verse. I think that's when it comes up, or maybe it comes up in this interlude. I think it's actually in this interlude. It's the second half of that interlude. You'll hear the banjo go. Right, so it's super cool, which is this part only in another harmony, right? This is why I love the Punch Brothers. So, you know, this is just a flavor, right? Dorian is akin, it's like Dorian is to minor as vanilla bean is to vanilla, or whatever. You make your own, it's just a flavor of a minor sound. And I kind of hear it as also a little bit more naturally happening. I don't know, it's more naturally consonant. So getting used to that sound is really cool. And that, going back to the minor major thirds thing, that C sharp is a natural extension of E minor, right? So that's like E minor 13, root 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. Right, isn't that cool? So it sounds really kind of natural. So that stuff's a lot easier to study on piano, of course, and you have to really know harmony pretty well. But it kind of it's transformed my thinking on chords to this, from like thinking about chords as static facts like E minor is EGB, to more thinking about chords as in the E minor pool on the 3 feet side you get EGB. Or you might even have just E and G, right, like this. And it sounds, that's another Punch Brothers song at the end of this record. Or no, at the end of All Shore, like it's going out of style. I think that's the first 2 notes. But that sounds like E minor, right? And so then I could add a full triad, and then I could have a minor 7, right? Or a minor 11, with a 9, with a 7. I can kind of wade down this pool until I'm getting like a C sharp in there. Right, so that's kind of how I think about it. And that explains the C sharp. Okay, so this specific melody, this is how I play it on guitar. Again, I'm not sure if this is actually Chris Eldridge's preferred method of playing this, but this is just the easy way I found, because I'm not nearly as good as anyone in that band. So I like to play the D. This is this bridge part, right? So I'm playing that every beat. And then this little thing in the key of D now is where I think that's what 1 feels like to me. We get tonic with the open D, and then the C sharp there, and then I'm playing the E open. So I'm playing 7, 1, 2, right? And if I kind of figure out, I think I do it like this. So I'm doing a hammer on, and then picking that. And I'm doing it like, let's see, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And then I can hit that really easy. And it kind of reverses at the end. And that B, I also have open. So to me, instead of going, that's fine too, but I kind of like it up here. And then, right, the changes there. And then I'm gonna go down here to this G sharp. And this kind of sounds like 3, 4, 5 of E, right? So this is kind of a major 2 sound, right? Where here, we play all this. And then, I'm sorry. Right, 3, 4, 5, kind of like this sound. And then it goes to G, from the G sharp AB to G AB. So kind of almost like hearing it like this. And then G. Right, that's where I'm trying to extrapolate that. That's kind of what I hear. So, okay, that part. Here's a part getting into this, the end of it, which is kind of go to this F sharp minor, I think, for guitar. This kind of little triad here. So I'm going, do this again. And then down now. So that now F sharp on top, and then the B, oh, what is it? Oh yeah. So that's an interesting chord. It's kind of like a A7. Kind of goes to F sharp minor. I think. So that's kind of how I play it. And again, I'm not really even interested in the exact right way, right? I'm trying to just get more enabled here to where we can figure stuff out in a different way. So, and then we have now this section, which is just the chords that leads us to this F sharp minor. So I think of the F sharp minor as kind of the pivot from the key of D stuff into this key of A stuff, or F sharp minor, right? And then that gets us also back into D. There's like this beautiful kind of symmetry there. And then also, the Dorian sound in here with the C sharp, which is a raised 6, right? That's a natural 6, or of Dorian, however you want to think of that, but you know, with the C sharp there. And when you play it, you know, so C. Let's try to play both together. The bass. Right, so that is in a total different context. But that Dorian thing is the link to the key of D, right? So E minor Dorian, which is the vibe we get here, and a lot of the notes, is the link to the key of D, because it's the same notes, right? Totally different feeling, right? When E minor is the main thing, I get that, versus the key of D is the main chord, right? Or the gravity. So that's kind of how I hope you can think about that. And then also going into number 2 more, the idea of really changing how we think about chords. The E minor, yeah, E minor is E, G, B, but it could be, and there could be an A in there could be an F sharp, there could be a C sharp, right? Right, so you can get really down the pool, more and more deep in the possible extensions of that chord. And these are just natural extensions, right? And after that, we can kind of get back to E. That's really the last extension we have is this 13. This is the jazzer in me talking. But you know, the 13 is like the kind of tallest kind of chord you see. Think about these rules like very loosely held, right? They're not rules, they're more conventions. So it's really cool to be in one key, E minor, and then I go to A, maybe like a major 4. So I had that C sharp, and then I could think of this going to D, right? And I could be in the key of D. The A7 could be a pivot. I don't even have to go to A7, I could just have the C sharp in there, and it kind of gives me a whole other flavor versus this, which that flat 6, you rarely hear. So this Dorian kind of vibe, when it's invoked, it's just really successful, and you hear it a lot. Hendrix loved it, right? It's just used all the time though. It's used in rock all the time. It's used in jazz all the time. So it's just really helpful to kind of have that six, this sound in your head, right? So when you hear, right, you know, with the bass, it's like, say, boo, boo. Right, that kind of sound. And then I love the reframing of this. Right, which is just such a good Easter egg if you're harmonically minded, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's cool. That's totally another take on that melody. Here's an additional tag onto this lesson that I thought was needed when I was editing. So I'm going to go over some just clarifying points really quickly. The first thing is I wanted to give you a visual representation of these notes and actually write them down for you, especially if you don't play piano. I started on piano and then went to guitar, and it was a huge asset, and I still use it a lot. But you know, this stuff is not about mental information or mental learning or memorizing things. It's more just about getting super acquired to this information. So if you've never seen these notes all together, that's what that looks like. So this is an E minor 13 chord. So we have root, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and then back to the root. A little crowded at the end, sorry. The main thing to see here is this kind of craziness that chords quickly turn into other chords, right? Because of the way we stack chords, right? So we have E minor and the key of G, then we have an F sharp chord and the next 3 notes in the scale alternating, and then we get a G chord, G, B, D. So we get these kind of shared notes, right? E minor and G are right on top of one another. E, G, B is E minor, G, B, D, and then similarly B minor and D are right in the middle of that, and then F sharp minor and A are at the end of that. So in some sense, these correlations happen all the time, right? And a B minor chord is kind of related to an E minor chord. A D chord's of, you know, the D and B minor and E minor and G, like those relative relationships. Really, as a musician, I think you need to almost think of them as the same thing. They're congruent. So anytime I've got E minor in a song, I could think G. Or if I have B minor in a song, I could think D. I'm not doing that to like make it easier. I'm doing that because often if I'm playing an E minor chord, if I play that G on top of it, or if I'm thinking about G, I automatically get a little bit more developed sound because I'm not playing the kind of explicit EGB, which is not really adding anything, especially if there's a bassist involved and they're providing the root, right? So nice to do that, nice to get this flexibility. When you're hearing harmony more vertical, as sometimes we do in the song, then it's also nice to think about chords in this way, where E minor, you know, the triad is, like I mentioned before, is like the kind of 3/5 side of the pull. That's the shallow end of the pull, and nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that's what the music calls for. And then the farther down in extensions you go, the more you kind of justify, each note kind of justifies further and further out, to where, like at some point, sometimes as a jazz musician, I've seen going one step further. And actually, let me show you this pattern before I talk about this. So the pattern, I think I mentioned this before, but minor third and major third alternating. So we have 3 half steps versus 4 half steps. And that gives us these minor and major triads that are happening all the time. If you continue that process on, you get a sharp 15, which is a weird interval, but this is like a C sharp to E is a minor third. So the next would be a major third above E, which would be G sharp. So that means that we're actually getting like in a G chord, you could justify this. I'll try it on guitar. What if I play something like G in the bass, and then I play F sharp, A, C sharp, E, G sharp. But right, hopefully you kind of heard that was kind of consonant, hopefully for you. Because there's all this structure right above it. Now on guitar that might not be the best application, but I've heard that actually played on piano and other contexts or between multiple instruments, and that note, this played out right, it sounds terrible, but it can actually be sold to you going through this harmonic kind of like loop, if that makes sense. And if you are hip to the circle fifths, I would get that in there too. If you're not, you should definitely keep the circle fifths in mind when you're studying harmony. What you're kind of doing is you're just going down the circle fifths, right? You're invoking, we're in E minor, and then we have some C sharps come up from the key of D. That gives us this Dorian sound. And then in the key of D, that's normal. Like we saw, right? This song gets this little thing, gets the key of D treatment, and also the E minor treatment. And then we have, in the key of D, you start to invoke you start to focus more on F sharp minor, getting into the bridge section, kind of being the main sound, right? That really pretty middle part. So, okay, the 2 points I wanted to make overall here would be to be able to really know these extensions. Maybe the left brain side of you knows them and really hip to the language that we use to talk about this stuff, what a G chord is, what a minor third or major third is. That, of course, is important, but that's often where it stops. You really want to hear these though. So sit down in your instrument, preferably piano if you can, because you can really easily play. Oh, we got one here. You can play like note in the bass and play a G chord above it. Like an E in the bass, G chord, or E, a B minor, E, D. You can kind of hear those flavors a little bit more. And that's really good practice just to be able to pick those triads out that anyone can kind of do, right? So you want to know them, you want to really hear them. Spend time on your instrument. It could be guitar too, of course, but this is a contextual exercise, meaning it's not that important. We don't care about playing them that much. We want to actually hear what it sounds like. So I might find, E in the bass, G triad. That's an E minor 7. All right. If I can find a B minor next, I could do it here. A little softer, right? E minor 9, a little bit. Like the farther out you go, the more nuanced these sounds get. How about a D triad? I could go between all those. D, B minor, G. I'll try to find them in one position too. This is really getting into guitar practice, right? Fretboard knowledge. So what if I go up here, E minor, G, B minor is the next one, right? What's the next one? D. And then F sharp minor, right? Ooh, I like that one, right? And then finally A. So you could do that in one position on the fretboard. You could just listen for those sounds. We're really trying to hear like, oh, this is a 13, 13. And of course I could just kind of play one of these, like a G chord, and then move the D down to C sharp. And I've got that sound, right? And this gets into number 2, repurpose notes and chords. So this is kind of what the Punch Brothers in groups that I'm really into often are so good at doing. If they're kind of exploratory in the harmonic realm, kind of, they will take one note or chord and then totally repurpose it. So this is actually a way you could think about Julep in general, is that you could think, okay, I was hanging around on these notes, and then when I get to the end, I forgot to mention this before, but right before the bridge interlude, Chris Thiele, I think, plays a G sharp. It kind of ends there, which is really cool. Instead of E minor. So that's something you can also get away with. I would mess with this, where your main character, in this case E minor at the beginning, becomes major. Just because why not, right? Especially it's a great way to transition into the next section. It kind of sets up like, we don't know what's coming, right? Nonetheless, you could think about an E minor and this first part of the song being relabeled. Instead of the 1 chord, then it can become a 2 to go to D, right? Which is kind of cool. It's not used explicitly like that. We kind of have that little break, and then it goes into the D. And then similarly, this D gets the 1 label, right? And then we can reappropriate it or relabel it into a 4 to go to here. 4, A, 1, 1, right, or 6. So these are definitely weird kind of concepts I'm talking about. So the most important thing is that you are hearing when this might be going on, or this could be another resource when you're trying to figure out a song and figuring out why a certain key change or chord worked. One of my favorite examples of all time that the Punch Brothers do this on, where they kind of reharmonize a melody, is in Familiarity, which is the epic tune on Phosphorescent Blues, first track. And that song is in a few different key centers. They use a lot of these tricks. But at one point, it's in the kind of last section. It's in E. It's kind of alternating between, I haven't played that song in a little bit, but it's like flat 6, 4, 1. Kind of going between the key of E, and it kind of goes to G a little bit. A, G, B minor. So it's using a similar chord progression in both keys, like a kind of a few different outside chords, and then we have 1, and then like a minor 3, and then they go into I think they're maybe E flat, C minor, G, B minor, E flat, so flat 6, minor 4, 1, 3, right, which is really cool. I'm getting away from myself, so that we're in G, and then Chris Eldridge comes in on this like last section. They're really pretty. That part, right? And then they kind of set up right before the vocal comes in. You hear Chris Thiele start to hum this D. So they're kind of setting this 2, 5, right? It's so on the scale, 5. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the band comes in, and it's now 3. Isn't that beautiful? So we have this expectation of going 5 and just being there, right? But instead, the 5 that he's singing, where the band kind of falls away, and this now becomes 3, mi, re, do. And now we're in B flat. So the D, which was 5 in G, is now 3 in B flat. Just because we can, right? Not. And it's so beautiful when you are not expecting a whole new key, right? We have this common note between 2 keys. So you can kind of view this whole tune in a similar way, where we just have these chords that are just related enough to another key that's usually close by in the circle. In this case, that's definitely what's going on. Okay, and that's mainly it. There's a lot of examples I could give for the repurposing. Another thing I would think about, as if you're interested in writing tunes or just having a fresh perspective on playing chords, especially when you're not the primary chord or harmony provider, then you have a little bit more responsibility to kind of stay true to the song. But I was going to mention this. It's kind of cool. I saw Feist's Tiny Desk recently. She just did a Tiny Desk. I'll have to link to it, but there's a song, one of the songs, I actually didn't know this tune, but the song's in like, I'm pretty sure it was in D minor, and I heard Feist, just to give an example here, she was playing an A minor on top of all the D minor stuff. So, typically we'd have a D minor, whatever. Even if I just hold a D minor in the treble, I could harmonize that. And this is a really cool, immediately, right, if I had that D minor on everything, I get B flat major 7, I get an F6, I get a G 9 with no third, right? So this is the kind of thinking I want you to do. But she was playing an A minor, even a little bit more farther out, right? D minor is the 1 in D minor. A minor, if you do this whole thing, you practice your third naming, which I can do this kind of intuitively. I'm not doing it by memory, I'm just doing it by knowing the piano super well, knowing these thirds. So that'd be D, F, A, C, E, G, B. Then back to D, right? So D, F, A is a D minor, F, A, C is F. So that'd be like our first little key center, D minor and F. It's just all down a letter, right? And then the next one would be C, E, G, A, C, E, C, E, G. So that'd be the C key center. And the next one would be whatever, G, B, D, G, B, G, B, D. We're getting into G major. So you're getting farther and farther away down the circle, right? And that one was be starting D minor and F on the left side, and then we have these other chords we're getting into. All to say that it's such a fresh idea to play an A minor triad. I just saw her strumming the same minor over these other chords. So we had like a D, an F. I can't do it all, but right. So instead of this kind of just leaves us there. That's fine. But this A minor is kind of like yearning, pulling our ear to these like deeper parts of the pool, if you will. I thought it was so interesting. So one way you can mess with this as a writer is just pick, if you know your extensions, right, then you could kind of pick some of those extensions. Or you might even do the opposite thing where you kind of stay on the one chord the whole song. So I could mess around with Julep playing chords to it and stay on like E minor and see how those kind of rub against the other sections. Or let's say in the D section, if I stay on the D, and I kind of mess with that. If I keep some of these notes and I just move, that'd be a really cool part, right? Like if I was a guitarist, I could come up with something like that. So I did a D, and then for the E part, the G sharp, I kept the 1 and 5, and I moved the F sharp to G sharp, and then to G, and then you can move it here to F sharp minor, right? So we're just trying to find these like ways of staying really still. Or I could do a similar thing and play a D. Let's say I'm on the D section, this section. What if I come in with like an A idea over that? So I could come in with, so I got that really nice congruent thing, right? Or F sharp minor idea. And F sharp minor, you'll start to see all this connection. That's in D major 7, right? So that's what I'm trying to get you to see, is that these are all super connected. And it really saves a lot of processing power in your head when you realize that these chords are all pretty thinly veiled related and almost the same thing. So I'm gonna leave it there. I hope this has been a good lesson. It's been fun to talk about this song because I love it so much. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. Make sure and like this video. Subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'll be back with other videos on songs I love, general things about theory and application on all this that I think is sorely needed. This is all kind of useless information if it's just not applied, right? I think that's a big misunderstanding of theory that I've had as a teacher, and I'm trying to get that across, how we can make this stuff really alive and useful, right? Actually cash it in for more understanding, more intuition, all those things that we really crave as musicians. So, okay, until next time, I'll see you, and happy playing Julep. Let me know how it goes.